Hello there, everyone. This is Julie Quinn, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about academic research and the web. I know you've been doing research and you've seen videos on this before. I actually have a two set of videos for you, and I wanted to talk to you today. I've been looking at your writing plan and giving everybody feedback on the writing plan. And I just want to do a little bit of a reminder about the qualitative differences between some of the web content that you can get out of the library and some content that you can find from the internet, and how that affects the power of the argument that you make and your own credibility. Okay, so say as an example, I decided to do research on a topic that was about, if you think about what's going on in America right now and issues of police departments, the justice system, and racism. I did a search. I believe I searched for police in the Shapiro Library and racism. And with that search, I came up with electronic full text, 22,000 hits. Excuse me. If you choose peer-reviewed and scholarly, get it down to about 4,000, and you choose real current research, let's say 2005 to now. What you're going to find, let's see if we can sort of search that. Let's see what comes up with that limitation that we've put on it. It's still 4,000. Let's make that even shorter. Let's say 2008 to now. Let's see if that affects the findings at all. Okay, police, racism, arrest. We're down to 134. Okay, what you'll find here are what we've chosen are electronic full text and peer-reviewed scholarly research. Most of the research that you do for this assignment has to be scholarly. Peer-reviewed, that means experts in the field have published their work. Other experts in that field have validated their research, have looked at it, have said this is timely, the research model is appropriate. This is not just anecdotal or personal feelings about a topic. This is why we strongly recommend that you use the Shapiro Library in a lot of your research, in the vast majority of your research. And so there's not some sort of inherent sort of unspoken bias when you just use the internet. And if I go to the internet and I do the same search on police, racism, and arrest, the same search terms that I used before, 16 million results. Now, what you're going to see in these search results are newspapers, Huffington Post, Philly Mag, TMZ, which is like a popular like entertainment blogger, news sites like Time and Al Jazeera, blogs like The Root. So you see interesting, and then Wikipedia entries, of course. Note that in any of the research that you do, I go to this Wikipedia entry for a second, because Henry Louis Gates was a professor, I believe he's a professor at Harvard, who was arrested because they said he was a black man trying to break into his own house. This was a couple of years ago. He had come back from a business trip, and I don't believe he had his keys. But a neighbor saw a suspicious person, and of course it was a wealthy neighborhood. He looked like he didn't belong there, and he was arrested. And he's like, look, just let me prove that, you know, I live here. And they ended up getting him for disorderly conduct. We can find information about issues of racism and arrest from an internet search, but the problem with this page is that we don't know who wrote this information. Anybody can create a Wikipedia account, and you'll find if you do Wikipedia research, if you just click on random article a couple of times, here's the random article option right here, that you get to banners on the page where it says this page needs updates. It's not updated. It looks like there's some bias. But if you don't know who the writer is and you don't know what the credentials of the writer are, you shouldn't be using that internet space. And I strongly suggest as well that you veer away from blog posts for the most part, unless the blog is well known and it's attached to a government entity or a New York Times blog. So it's like a newspaper blog where it's a journalist and the person is verifiable. If the person has a screen name Mustang 12 and Mustang 12 wrote this blog post, I would strongly recommend, like Wikipedia, that you don't use it. For your own personal interest, maybe as a gateway for getting some key terms and for understanding maybe some of the concepts, sure, but not as a documentable source in your text. So if we went to, I went to Slate. Slate is a lean, slightly left news website, and found this very interesting article. Police data suggests, published recently, police data suggests Black and Hispanic drivers are searched more often than whites. We filed public records requests to gain access to police records. We found evidence of racially biased policing. So that is interesting to me. So what this shows to me, though, is that you can see that they filed public record requests with 50 states. They've collected 100 million records from 31 states. On Monday, they're releasing the data, the preliminary results of the data. This is very interesting content. But then you want to ask yourself, well, credential the source. This is from the web. This looks like this would be about our topic. This is timely. If you look at the date stamp, they're explaining how they got their data, not just this is what they think is the case, but they went to go through thousands of pages of content, right? So what you have to do is verify who's doing this, who's the author. Sharad Goel, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, he's an assistant professor at Stanford University in the School of Engineering. Well, I'm wondering if Sharad Goel helped crunch those numbers. The other writer was Cheryl Phillips. I looked her up. Is the Lori Loki, visiting professor in professional journalism at Stanford. She previously worked as an investigative reporter and editor. Okay, so at least we have the credentials of these sources. They are academic. They are working in tandem to put this together. So if you had a web source like this, and you were able to say, as you start to write your essay, according to Sharad Goel and Cheryl Phillips, both professors at, Research One universities, and Cheryl Phillips is a professor of journalism, you've added a credential, you've added a reason to trust this sort of newspaper/blog post. So I'm not saying that you can't use any blogs, but you have to credential the sources, and you have to look at how they gathered their evidence. This evidence is pretty well collected. It wasn't one state that was just California or just Arkansas. They filed these requests for all of 50 states. They looked at information over the last 10 years. That's longitudinal, not just over the last year, but over the last couple of years. There is integrity in this data collection model. So I think that that's really interesting. They link to, it's not just their ideas, but Nobel Prize-winning economist Gary Becker, to show how they came up with ideas and how they're sort of interpreting their data. They developed a statistical test of discrimination based on search rates, search success rates, and interplay. So yes, there's real valid information on the web, but I think you have to be really careful about the things that you find. Here's another blog site that I found, All Things Crime. If you go to About This blog, the author is Patrick H. Moore, I believe. If we scroll down to the bottom, let's double check. And copyright 2013, but it looks like it's fairly recent, well, within the last year. But the author is Patrick Moore. He's the author of Cicero's Dead, an award-winning crime novel. So he's a novelist. He is a Los Angeles-based private investigator, a sentencing mitigation specialist. I'd have to look that term up, but my understanding of what that means is that maybe he works in conjunction with defense attorneys to help prepare cases for how to get the sentences shrunk, and crime writer. He's been in the field for 10 years. He holds a master's, but look at this. He holds a master's degree in English Lit. And he works as a community college English teacher. Heck, hey, well, he's in my field. I don't know if he's he's got interesting credentials. You wouldn't want to use this blog as your primary source, nor would you want to use the Slate post as your primary source. His is he has interesting background, but I think I would juggle, and I would say that, crime and literature, his focus is more crime in the news, historical crime, and how do you present crime in books. So yes, he talks about these topics, but from an entertainment perspective primarily. So when you're doing, excuse me, your research. I really want you to start and end with the databases, and then use a seasoning some of the content you find on the web. If you find that you can't find any of your thoughtful academic research in the databases, reach out to a librarian, chat 24/7 with the librarian, or with me during my office hours, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, 10 to 4. We can just have a quick discussion and narrow this together. And as one of the benefits of using the library databases, if you go into an academic journal text and you click on this, this is a timely article, Police Brutality and Black Health, Setting for the Agenda for Public Health Scholars. So this is sort of a public health angle. Remember, you can get formatted APA references or MLA works cited entries really quickly. There's a little bit that you'd have to update, like that letter right there. But it allows you to spend the majority of your time working on the writing of the essay itself. So again, 80–90% of your time should be in the library databases with a little bit of seasoning from the internet. If you find that it's opposite, talk to me. There are exceptions to the case, going to .gov websites for the most part, some .edu, association journals or public access journals on the web. But really take this to heart. Do the best you can with your academic level research, and make sure that you're sharing the credentials of your sources, because that will elevate your own credibility as you write about these topics.